thief only comes to steal, to slaughter, and to destroy. Listen to that again. A thief comes only to steal, to slaughter, and to destroy. In our culture, we kind of have a fascination with evil. Ouija boards, the Charlie thing. My wife and I, we went to a Walgreens to stop by like a Red Box. We don't have enough money for Netflix. We stopped and it was crazy. We were going through all these different videos and I had to like shield her eyes because every other video, exorcism, crazy horror movie, like all these like grotesque images. We have this fascination with evil. We kind of dance around it, but the reality is that evil is actually present in our lives. See, the thief, he's the evil one. His name is Satan. His name is Satan. He's the evil one. A lot of times we don't like to talk about him. We don't like to think that he exists. But Jesus actually says that he exists. From this reading from John 10, it says the thief has come to steal, to slaughter, and destroy. And it's not the only time that he talks about Satan. He talks about him all over the scriptures, yet it's always kind of over our head. As Jason was kind of talking about, Jesus wants a deep and personal relationship with you. That's the invitation this weekend, is to have this deep and personal invitation with this deep love for Jesus. He invites us into this great relationship, and he has a plan for your life, a plan not for woe, not to steal, slaughter, and destroy, but an abundant life. Realize that Satan's plan is completely different. He doesn't want a relationship with you. He wants you to think that he doesn't exist, that you don't even recognize him. You don't recognize his voice. And his plan is very simple. To get you, to get me, to worship something other than Jesus. Think about that. His entire plan is for you to worship something other than Jesus. One of my favorite authors, he has this amazing quote. In the first part of it, he says that we have a Grand Canyon-sized hole in our hearts. I want to show you guys a couple of images from the Grand Canyon. Maybe some of you have been there. If you've ever gotten the opportunity to, it's so vast. It's huge. Look at this river, the sun beating down, this massive rock formation. It's absolutely unbelievable. I got to see it a couple of years ago. It's just huge, limitless. And this author says that we actually have a Grand Canyon-sized hole in our hearts. A Grand Canyon-sized hole in our hearts. Like we desire something more. We desire something limitless. We desire something bigger than ourselves. And right there, the thief comes to steal, to slaughter, and to destroy. Another name for Satan, another name for the evil one, is the father of lies. Like, don't make any doubts about it. Like, he is a liar. That's his whole goal. That's his whole thing, is to make us worship something other than Jesus. And so he does that by lying. Like, to realize that the evil one has actually lied to you. There's a great saint, his name's Saint Ignatius of Loyola, and he always says that in our prayer we have three speakers: God, ourselves, and the evil one. Don't make any doubts about it, that the evil one has spoken lies to you. I want you to stop and I want you to imagine waking up in the morning. You wake up, you get ready, you brush your teeth, maybe you have some breakfast. You put your clothes on for school and you look in the mirror. Think about that moment. What do you hear? Nobody wants you. You're all alone. You're a burden to everyone. That you don't have what it takes. that you will never, ever be enough. That no one actually knows your name. Everybody has forgotten you. I want you to realize that it got eerily silent in this room as I was saying those. Why? It's because we know that they're true. And I want you to know this. None of those are from Jesus. None of them. Any of the lies that you have heard that have even resembled that, absolutely none of them are from our God who loves us, who created us, who wants a relationship with us. Absolutely none of them. This is the God who invites us into an abundant life. This is not the shepherd. This is the evil one. We have a Grand Canyon-sized hole in our hearts. Our author says, the author that I was talking about before, we have a Grand Canyon-sized hole in our hearts that we try to fill with marbles. Little glass, cheap pieces of glass. And so we hear these lies. We start to actually believe them. And so because of that, we start to medicate those lies with a variety of sins. I mean, imagine there's an altar right here front and center. And the song that we were praying with earlier before, Here I Am to Worship. I mean, imagine like an altar here, altar cloth. You got the candles, the whole deal. Where is Jesus supposed to be is right on that altar. Saying here, and we are singing at the top of our lungs, here I am to worship. But the reality is that the evil one speaks to us in such a way that we start to worship other things than Jesus. And so we start to take Jesus down from that altar. Maybe he was never there in the first place. We take him down from that altar. We put up there our perfection. We start to worship the idea that we need to be perfect. We start to worship the sport that we play. We start to worship our acting. We start to worship our academics like a really good subject that we're in. We start to worship all of these things other than Jesus, our body, our boyfriend or girlfriend. I mean, you name it, you can place it there because anything other than Jesus is his plan. That's his goal. It's nothing else. To make you worship, to make me worship something other than him. That's where the lie slips in and we medicate it with something else that we worship. I don't know where you're at, but I would say all of you are in one of these two camps. You've either, over the last couple of weeks, couple of months, a couple of years, maybe your whole life, at some point, you're either walking towards God or you're walking away from him. And I think it's really important for you to really deeply look at that question. Are you walking towards God or are you walking away from him? Because the way the evil one speaks to you is an entirely different way, depending on how you answer that question. I mean, think about it. Are you following Jesus or are you walking away from him? If you're walking away from him, it's really simple. The evil one is going to tell you to keep going. He's going to say, look at this shiny marble that you try to fill, this Grand Canyon-sized hole in your heart. Keep looking at it. Isn't it shiny? Doesn't it feel good? Isn't it amazing? Keep your eyes focused on here in such a way that you don't even see the Grand Canyon-sized hole in your heart. And he's going to say, keep going. And as you enter into this weekend, my challenge to you is really simple. Is to actually look at that hole. And to look at that marble and say, is that marble, whatever it is, even if it's something that's good, is it actually fulfilling my life? Because the evil one's going to tell you to keep going. If you're somebody that's been following Jesus, he's going to speak to you in a very different way. Most of your sins are not going to be very external sins, but they're going to be very internal. Sins of pride, maybe sins of competition. Different ways to get you away from him, to actually get you to worship something other than Jesus, even if you're doing super Jesus-y things, like coming to a Steubenville conference or going on retreats, being a part of your youth group, whatever it is, like we can actually worship those things instead of Jesus. That's how cunning, that's how conniving, That's how amazingly chaotic the evil one is. One of the ways that the evil one has spoken to me in my life is actually through anxiety. When I was in high school, as I was growing up, I was going through and got to the point where I was in my sophomore year of high school. And at that point in my life, I had thought about ending it. You see, this anxiety just crawled up into my life, where I was so worried about being wanted by others. So worried about it. Like when I was saying, every single morning I would wake up and I'd look into the mirror, and the voice that I would be hearing is, nobody wants you. Nobody wants to include you. Everybody's forgotten you. You're not worth anything. And from that, this anxiety filled my heart, so much so that at points I had to go to counseling for it. Like it literally would take over my life, where all of a sudden I would feel like I'm not wanted and close in. Hide in the dark. Turn off the lights, and it's just me. The evil one made me think that I was actually alone. Once God started to break into my life through things like this, through retreats, all these great things, I started to actually speak about these things. This anxiety that was going on in my heart, the ways that I would medicate it through my sin. Going to confession, actually talking with somebody who's a little older, my youth minister, about all these different thoughts that were kind of going on. This anxiety that was in my heart, so the way that I medicated, I actually started to speak about it. And most of all, I started to actually talk to Jesus about it. And it was absolutely transformative. Because see, all these things I had been hearing were absolutely, completely, 100% lies from the evil one. And I started to actually speak to him who is nothing but truth. And I started to place him on that altar. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying that anxiety isn't still a part of my life at different points. But I know that I can look to the crucifix and know that there is purpose, there's meaning. I know that in this dark place that I was in the isolation that I felt, that I could actually bring things to the light. One of my favorite saints of all time is St. Francis of Assisi, the namesake of this school, Franciscan. And this crucifix up here is actually known as like a Franciscan cross. St. Francis has this amazing short little prayer before the crucifix. And one of my favorite lines in there, in this prayer, is enlighten the darkness of my heart. Enlighten the darkness of my heart. Again, I don't know if you've been following him. I don't know if you've been walking away. I don't know exactly where you're at, what it is that you struggle with, the lies that you've heard, and the ways that you've medicated it. But my brothers and sisters, when you look at this cross, pray, enlighten the darkness of my heart, no matter the sin, no matter the lie, and let him speak truth to your heart. Let him enlighten any darkness that's in your heart.